The message was scrawled in smeared red lipstick across the plaster wall. "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." It was a plea, a confession, a taunt. Chicago, a city still recovering from the wounds of World War II, was unprepared for the terror that would soon grip its streets. The post-war boom had brought hope, prosperity, and a sense of security. But that illusion shattered in the winter of 1945. The cold winds that swept through the city carried more than the bite of winter. They carried whispers of something dark, something unexplainable. The people of Chicago had heard of killers before. The city was no stranger to crime, but this was different. The brutality of the murders and the chilling messages left behind marked the work of someone far more sinister than a common criminal. The newspapers dubbed him the Lipstick Killer. On the night of June 5, 1945, the city's descent into horror began. Josephine Ross, a 43-year-old woman living alone in a modest apartment, had spent the evening running errands. Neighbors saw her return home around sunset, bags in hand, humming a tune as she climbed the stairs to her unit. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until the next morning. Her daughter, worried after repeated unanswered phone calls, arrived at the apartment and pushed open the door. What she found inside would haunt her for the rest of her life. Josephine was dead. Her body lay sprawled on the bedroom floor, her head wrapped in a bloody cloth. Her throat had been slashed. There was no sign of forced entry, no stolen valuables. Only the unmistakable evidence of a struggle. Clumps of dark hair, not belonging to Josephine, were found clutched in her hands. Had she fought back? Had she seen the face of the monster who took her life? The police arrived and quickly came to an unsettling conclusion. The killer had taken his time. He had washed the victim's body after the murder, carefully wiping away traces of blood as if cleansing the scene of his crime. There was no message left behind, no lipstick scrawl, just an eerie silence that left detectives disturbed. It was a chilling murder, but at that moment, no one knew it was just the beginning. 6 months later, on December 10th, 1945, the terror escalated. Frances Brown, a 32-year-old woman, was found brutally murdered in her apartment. Like Josephine, she had been stabbed repeatedly, her body carefully arranged. But this time, the killer left something behind, something that sent a wave of fear through the city. Scrawled in lipstick across the wall were words that made even hardened detectives shudder. "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." Who was the person behind this chilling plea? A remorseful murderer? A sadistic madman toying with the pursuers? The message raised more questions than answers. Unlike the first crime, this one had clear signs of forced entry. A neighbor reported hearing a loud thud in the middle of the night, but assumed it was nothing more than an argument. The truth was far worse. The police, now convinced that a serial killer was at large, had little to work with. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no solid leads, only the growing certainty that he would strike again. And he did. On January 7, 1946, just weeks after the discovery of Frances Brown's body, a nightmare unfolded, one so horrific that even seasoned detectives struggled to comprehend its savagery. It happened in Edgewater, an ordinary neighborhood where families live without fear. In one of those homes was 6-year-old Suzanne Degnan, a bright, playful girl who was fast asleep when death came for her. At dawn, her parents woke to an empty bed and a ransom note. Get $20,000 ready and wait for word. Do not notify the FBI or police. Bills in 5s and 10s. The Degnans' world collapsed in an instant. They called the police, who searched frantically, hoping against hope that Suzanne was still alive. But within hours, their worst fears were confirmed. A maintenance worker found the first gruesome clue, a severed limb clogging a storm drain. Then, piece by piece, police recovered the little girl's dismembered body from various locations around the city. The brutality of the crime was beyond comprehension. This wasn't just a murder. It was an act of pure evil. Whoever had taken Suzanne had done so with the cold precision of a butcher. As investigators pieced together the horror, one thing became clear. The lipstick killer had taken his reign of terror to an unimaginable new level, and the city was paralyzed in fear. The gruesome nature of the killings left Chicago reeling. Women began double-locking their doors. Husbands walked their wives to work, and parents refused to let their children out of their sight. The police were under immense pressure. The newspapers ran daily headlines demanding justice, demanding answers. But the killer was still out there, watching, waiting. Had he finally gotten what he wanted? Had he proven that he was beyond control? Or was there something more to his message? Some hidden clue that investigators had yet to decipher? The hunt for the lipstick killer was on, and the city of Chicago braced for what came next. Because one thing was certain. He wasn't done yet. The city of Chicago was in the grip of terror. The brutal murders of Josephine Ross, Frances Brown, and Lil Suzanne Degnan had sent shockwaves through the community. The message scrawled in lipstick, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself," echoed in the minds of detectives and citizens alike. But the killer was still out there. And the deeper investigators dug, the stranger the case became. With the discovery of Suzanne Degnan's dismembered body, law enforcement was desperate for answers. But the more they examined the evidence, the more contradictions they found. Investigators retraced Suzanne's final hours, questioning anyone who might have seen or heard something unusual. One neighbor, a middle-aged woman who lived in the apartment building across the street, claimed she had seen a man lurking near the Degnan home the night of the abduction. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, she insisted, kept looking over his shoulder, like he knew he was being watched. But another witness, a milkman on his early morning rounds, told a completely different story. "There was no man," he said with certainty. "I was out here at 5 a.m., and I didn't see a soul." Had the woman imagined it? Had the milkman missed something? Or was the truth buried somewhere in between? Then there was the issue of the ransom note. The demand for $20,000 was highly unusual. Why would a cold-blooded killer, one who had left a signature message on the wall of a previous crime scene, suddenly ask for money? It suggested a different motive, perhaps even a different suspect altogether. If the killer truly couldn't control himself, as the lipstick message claimed, why ask for a ransom at all? Investigators turned their attention to the location of Suzanne's dismemberment. It was clear from the condition of her remains that the crime hadn't been committed at the Degnan home. The killer had taken her somewhere else, somewhere with the tools necessary for such a gruesome act. Then, a shocking discovery pointed detectives in a new direction. Inside a basement laundry room of a nearby apartment building, police found bloody water pooled around a drain. A hacksaw lay discarded in the corner, its blade still slick with something dark. And in the dim light, they spotted smears, small streaks of something red along the walls. Lipstick. Had the killer been here? Was this where Suzanne's final moments had taken place? If so, how had no one seen or heard anything? While investigators struggled to piece together the crime, pressure from the public and the media mounted. The Chicago Tribune ran near-daily updates on the murders, and citizens demanded answers. Detectives needed a lead. That lead came in the form of an informant, a small-time criminal who had spent years drifting through the city's underbelly. He claimed to know something about the lipstick killer. "He ain't working alone," the man muttered under his breath when police brought him in for questioning. Detectives leaned in. "What do you mean?" "He's got a friend. Someone who knows what he's doing, but don't want to get his hands dirty. That ransom note? That was someone else." The statement sent a chill through the investigators. Had they been looking at this all wrong? Was there more than one killer? The idea of a duo, a deranged murderer and a calculating accomplice, added a terrifying new layer to the case. If true, it meant the killings weren't just the work of a madman spiraling out of control. It meant there was a plan. As the theory of multiple suspects gained traction, another shocking twist emerged. A handwriting expert had been called in to analyze the ransom note. He compared it to various samples from criminal records, searching for a match. Days later, he called detectives with a name, William Heirens, a 17-year-old college student with a history of petty crimes. Heirens was known for breaking into homes, but never for violence. Could he really be the lipstick killer? Detectives were skeptical, but when they searched his dorm room, they found something chilling. A newspaper clipping about the lipstick murders, carefully folded and tucked inside a textbook. A small stack of women's undergarments, none of which belonged to anyone Heirens knew. And, most disturbingly, a stolen gun. It wasn't enough to prove he was a killer, but it was enough to make him their prime suspect. With Heirens in custody, police ramped up their efforts to extract a confession. He was interrogated for 3 days straight, denied sleep, and allegedly beaten by officers desperate to close the case. Finally, on the brink of exhaustion, Heirens uttered a sentence that made headlines across the nation. "If I did it, I don't remember." It wasn't a confession, not really, but in the eyes of law enforcement, it was enough. Still, doubts remained. If Heirens was a lipstick killer, why hadn't he confessed outright? Why the cryptic statement? And more importantly, if he wasn't the killer, then who was? As police prepared to charge Heirens, some detectives weren't convinced they had their man. Too many questions remained unanswered. What about the informant's claim of an accomplice? What about the contradictory witness statements? What about the bizarre ransom demand that didn't fit the killer's previous patterns? Had they arrested the wrong person? If so, the real lipstick killer was still out there, watching, waiting. The room was silent, except for the steady tap, tap, tap of a detective's pen against the interrogation table. William Heirens sat slumped in his chair, his eyes hollow from days of relentless questioning. Across from him, the lead investigator leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "We know you did it, William. Just tell us why." The teenager rubbed his temples, exhaustion written all over his face. He had already given them a vague statement. "If I did it, I don't remember." But that wasn't enough. The police wanted a confession, one that would end the media frenzy and close the case once and for all. Then, in a moment that sent shockwaves through the precinct, Heirens muttered something strange. Maybe it was George. The detectives exchanged puzzled looks. "George? Who's George?" one of them asked. Heirens let out a slow, shuddering breath. "He does things, bad things. I try to stop him, but I can't." The officers leaned forward, sensing a breakthrough. But as they pressed for more details, Heirens shut down completely. He wouldn't say another word. Had they just uncovered the existence of an accomplice? Or was something far more disturbing at play? Despite Heirens' cryptic reference to George, detectives moved forward with their case against him. But behind the scenes, not everyone was convinced they had the right man. One investigator, a veteran detective named William Grant, had a growing suspicion that something wasn't adding up. For one, there were the fingerprints. Police had recovered a bloody smudge from the ransom note in Suzanne Degnan's case, along with a palm print from the crime scene. They compared them to Heirens' prints and found no match. If Heirens had committed the murders, why weren't his fingerprints at any of the scenes? Then there was the handwriting analysis. Experts compared the ransom note to Heirens' writing samples, searching for similarities. The results were inconclusive. Some believed the letters matched. Others weren't so sure. And perhaps most unsettling of all, the lipstick message left at Frances Brown's crime scene. The police had no way of proving that Heirens had written it. In fact, certain handwriting experts believed that the scrawl didn't match Heirens' writing at all. If he wasn't the one who had left that haunting plea, then who had? Just when it seemed the case was about to close, a new witness emerged, one whose story threatened to unravel everything. A woman named Janet Riley, a resident of the apartment building where Frances Brown had been murdered, came forward with a shocking claim. "I saw a man leaving her apartment the night she was killed," she told investigators. "And it wasn't William Heirens." According to Janet, the man she saw was older, possibly in his mid-30s, with sharp features and dark, piercing eyes. He had moved quickly, disappearing into the night before she could get a clear look at him. When detectives showed her a picture of Heirens, she shook her head. "That's not him." The revelation sent a wave of panic through the department. If Heirens wasn't the man she had seen, had they arrested an innocent person? By now, the Chicago Police Department was under immense pressure. The public wanted justice. The media had already painted Heirens as a monster. If he wasn't the lipstick killer, then the real murder was still out there. And worse, the police had wasted valuable time chasing the wrong man. But instead of reopening the investigation, authorities made a chilling decision. They silenced Janet Riley. When reporters tried to interview her, She refused to speak. Soon after, she moved away, disappearing completely from public view. Rumors swirled that she had been threatened, that she had been paid off, that someone high up didn't want the truth to come out. And just like that, her testimony vanished. On July 30th, 1946, after 6 days of brutal interrogation, William Heirens finally broke. "I'll confess," he whispered. "Just make it stop." With his words, the police had what they needed. The official confession was written down, typed up, and signed. In it, Heirens admitted to all 3 murders: Josephine Ross, Frances Brown, and Suzanne Degnan. But something was off. When detectives read over his statement, they noticed inconsistencies. Details that should have been crystal clear were vague. Crucial facts didn't match the crime scenes. It was almost as if Heirens had no idea what he was confessing to. And then there was George. When asked to explain his earlier reference to the name, Heirens claimed that George was his other self, a dark personality that took over when he committed the murders. Police latched onto this explanation, spinning it into a sensationalized story of a young man with a split personality, half genius, half monster. But many saw it differently. Was Heirens truly suffering from a mental break? Or had he simply said whatever the police wanted to hear, just to escape the relentless torture of his interrogations? Just as the case seemed closed, an unexpected discovery sent a final jolt of terror through the city. In an abandoned building near the Edgewater neighborhood, a group of children stumbled upon something gruesome: a stash of old, yellowed photographs hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The images, faded with time, showed something horrifying. Women, dozens of them. Some were asleep, others appeared to be unconscious. And in every single photo, a man's shadow loomed just outside the frame. The police examined the photos carefully, searching for a link to the lipstick murders. But the women in the images were never identified. Their fates remained unknown. Had they been other victims? Was a lipstick killer responsible for more deaths than anyone realized? And perhaps most disturbing of all, was the man in the photographs still out there? The discovery of the hidden photographs sent a shockwave through Chicago. The images of unconscious women, some eerily still, others appearing drugged, ignited a frenzy of fear. Who were they? Where were they now? And, most disturbingly, was the lipstick killer responsible for more deaths than anyone had imagined? The newspapers ran with the story, splashing bold headlines across the front pages. More victims? The lipstick killer's secret trophy room. Police ignored clues. Has a serial monster walked free? The Chicago Police Department, already under scrutiny for their handling of the case, scrambled to contain the fallout. Officials declared the photographs unrelated to the lipstick murders, but the public wasn't convinced. If anything, the city was more terrified than ever. And then, just as tensions reached a boiling point, another message appeared. On the morning of August 5th, 1946, a janitor cleaning an abandoned building near the Chicago River noticed something strange on the wall. Written in red lipstick, just like before, were the chilling words, "I am still here. Stop lying to them." The message was signed with a single letter, G. The implications were horrifying. Had the wrong man been imprisoned? Was the real lipstick killer still at large? Or worse, was there never just one killer to begin with? The hunt begins, again. Police were forced to re-examine everything they thought they knew. If Heirens wasn't working alone, or if he wasn't the killer at all, who was G? Detectives pored over old case files, desperate for something they had missed. They scoured crime scenes, interrogated former suspects, and revisited the witnesses who had been silenced. One name kept surfacing: a former mental hospital orderly, fired years prior for inappropriate behavior with female patients. A man known to frequent the same neighborhoods where the murders took place. A shadowy figure who had never been fully investigated. His name? George Mogan. The coincidence was too much to ignore. Had William Heirens, in his delirious state, accidentally named the real killer all along? Detectives tracked Mogan to a rundown boarding house on the city's west side. The landlady described him as quiet but strange. "He don't talk much," she muttered, tightening her shawl. "But he listens. Too much, maybe." With a search warrant in hand, officers stormed into Mogan's tiny apartment. Inside, they found something that made their blood run cold. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, not just of the lipstick murders, but of other unsolved crimes dating back a decade. Tucked beneath his mattress, they found a box filled with stolen women's belongings, rings, hairpins, scarves, trinkets taken from victims long forgotten, and on his dresser, smeared across the cracked mirror in red lipstick. I tried to stop, but she wanted to play. It was undeniable. The lipstick killer hadn't been caught at all. He had been watching, waiting, and laughing as Chicago condemned the wrong man. As detectives prepared to arrest him, a terrifying realization hit them. Mogan wasn't in the apartment. He was still out there. The city was thrown into chaos. Police checkpoints sprang up overnight. Officers patrolled the streets, showing Mogan's picture to anyone who would look. Then, on the evening of August 7, 1946, a call came in. A woman's scream had been heard in an alley near a closed-down theater on the city's north side. When police arrived, they found a woman barely conscious, her lipstick smeared across her face in a grotesque imitation of the killer's signature. And standing over her, his hands shaking with twisted anticipation, George Mogan. The battle between good and evil. Drop it, Mogan. The officers' voices echoed through the alley, their guns trained on the man who had terrorized Chicago. But Mogan only smiled. "It's too late," he whispered. "She already belongs to me." He lunged. The gunshots that followed shattered the night. Mogan collapsed to the ground, blood pooling beneath him as his body spasmed. Even as life drained from him, he kept grinning, his lips curling into something inhuman. As officers approached, he let out a final, ragged breath, and in a voice barely above a whisper, he muttered, "You'll never know how many." Then he was gone, a city in shock. The nightmare was finally over, or so they thought. As the investigation into Mogan's life deepened, disturbing connections emerged. The photographs found in the abandoned building, many of the women were still missing. Some were later identified as young women who had vanished from Chicago over the years. Their disappearances never linked to the lipstick murders, until now. And the worst revelation? Mogan had been in and out of mental institutions for years. Each time, he was released after being deemed harmless. Had authorities unwittingly let a monster walk free, time and time again? The wrong man? With Mogan dead, the case should have been closed. But there was still one loose end. William Heirens. He was still behind bars, serving multiple life sentences for crimes that now seem increasingly unlikely to be his. Would the justice system correct its mistake? Would Heirens be freed? Or would Chicago let an innocent man rot in prison? Because admitting the truth was too terrifying to face? The answer was more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Chicago let out a collective sigh of relief. George Mogan, the man who had haunted the city's nightmares, was dead. The lipstick killer had finally been stopped. The newspapers hailed the police as heroes, printing triumphant headlines. The lipstick killer is dead. Chicago can sleep again. But behind the scenes, things weren't so simple. Because William Heirens was still in prison, the scapegoat of Chicago. In the days following Mogan's death, a growing number of legal experts, journalists, and activists demanded that Heirens' case be re-examined. Had the city condemned an innocent man while the real killer roamed free? The evidence against Heirens had always been questionable at best. No fingerprints matched. No physical evidence tied him to the murders. His confession had been extracted under extreme duress. 6 days of sleep deprivation, psychological torment, and alleged beatings. And now, with Mogan's trophies of terror coming to light, it seemed more certain than ever. Heirens had been railroaded. Yet, when reporters pressed city officials, they received only silence. The police department refused to comment. The mayor's office dodged questions. Heirens' case was too big to unravel. If the justice system admitted it had convicted the wrong man, it would collapse under the weight of its own corruption. The trial that never was. George Mogan never faced a courtroom. His guilt was assumed, his crime stacked upon him, without the need for legal scrutiny. But in the absence of a trial, troubling questions lingered. If Mogan was a true lipstick killer, why hadn't he confessed? Was he working alone, or was there another accomplice still at large? Could the cryptic messages and symbols left at the crime scenes point to something even darker? Some detectives weren't convinced that Mogan had committed all the murders. There were glaring inconsistencies between his known crimes and the lipstick murders. One investigator, a retired officer who had worked the original case, told a reporter off the record, "I'm not saying we got the wrong guy, but I'm not saying we got the right one either." Over the years, the lipstick murders took on a mythical status. Parents used to tell to frighten children, "Be good, or the lipstick killer will get you." The abandoned apartment where Suzanne Degnan had been taken became a local haunted site, with whispers that her spirit still roamed the halls, and a chilling message scrawled in red lipstick. "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself," became one of the most infamous crime scene notes in history. But beyond the urban legends, one truth remained undeniable. Someone, somewhere, knew more than they had ever admitted. In 1952, 6 years after Mogan's death, a demolition crew began tearing down an old tenement building in Chicago's Uptown district. As workers stripped the walls, one of them noticed something strange behind the plaster, a hidden crawl space, its entrance sealed with old boards. Inside the space was a small wooden chest, its brass lock rusted with time. When they pried it open, the contents sent a shudder through the workers. Inside were dozens of pieces of jewelry, torn photographs, and a single red lipstick, melted with age. And at the bottom, folded carefully, was a note written in the same jagged scrawl as the infamous message at the crime scene. It read, "She wanted me to stop, but she was lying." The police were called immediately, and an investigation was launched. But after a few months, the findings were quietly buried. No new arrests were made. No public statements were given. And just like that, the case of the lipstick killer was put to rest. Or so the city believed. Because decades later, in a prison cell far from the headlines, William Heirens sat staring at the ceiling. And as the guards made their final rounds at night, they swore they heard him whisper something, so soft, so eerie, it sent a shiver through their spines. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just him. It was always us. For decades, the lipstick murders were thought to be a closed chapter in Chicago's history. George Mogan was dead. William Heirens was locked away. The city had moved on. But in 1975, nearly 30 years later, the horror returned. On a frigid January morning, a maid at the Lakewood Arms Hotel in downtown Chicago pushed open the door to room 409. What she saw inside made her scream. The room was bathed in red. The walls, the sheets, everything was smeared with it. A woman lay lifeless on the bed, her face twisted in an expression of terror. And there on the bathroom mirror, scrawled in fresh red lipstick, were the words, "I am still here." The message was signed the same way as before, with a single taunting letter, G. The police arrived within minutes, swarming the crime scene as reporters caught wind of the breaking news. Was this the work of a copycat? Or had the real lipstick killer never been caught at all? The murder of Linda Vaughn, a 28-year-old journalist, shook Chicago to its core. Her colleagues revealed that, before her death, Linda had been investigating the original lipstick murders. She had spoken to retired officers, tracked down old witnesses, and even gotten access to previously sealed police files. And just a week before she was killed, Linda had confided in a friend, "I think they got it all wrong. The real killer, I think he's still out there." Whatever she had discovered, someone didn't want it getting out. With Linda's murder reviving old fears, independent investigators began digging back into the case. And the deeper they looked, the darker the truth became. One particularly chilling theory emerged. What if the lipstick killer wasn't just one man? What if the murders were the work of a secret network, a group of killers who share a twisted obsession with death? Some pointed to the eerie similarities between Mogan and Heirens, despite them supposedly not knowing each other. Others believed that the cryptic lipstick messages were never meant for the police at all, but were actually taunts from one killer to another. And then there was the most disturbing question of all. If George Mogan had truly acted alone, why did the killings continue? The murder of Linda Vaughn set off a citywide panic. Women were afraid to go out alone. Stores sold out of deadbolt locks. Everywhere, people whisper the same question. What if he's back? Then, just days after Linda's funeral, another message appeared, this time on a public restroom mirror in a downtown department store. Written in smudge red lipstick, it read, "You forgot me." It was clear this wasn't over. In 1991, William Heirens died in prison at the age of 83. He had spent his entire adult life behind bars, protesting his innocence until his final breath. By then, the lipstick murders had become more myth than memory, a legend whispered in crime circles and late-night ghost stories. But on the 75th anniversary of Suzanne Degnan's murder, an anonymous package arrived at the Chicago Tribune. Inside was a single, yellowed photograph, one of the same photos discovered in the hidden crawl space all those years ago. And on the back, in faded red ink, was a message. You should have looked deeper. The package had no return address, no fingerprints, no explanation, just a final, chilling warning. Because maybe the lipstick killer never left. Maybe he's still out there, watching, waiting, and ready to write his next message. The lipstick murders remain one of the most chilling and controversial cases in true crime history. Was William Heirens wrongfully convicted? Was George Mogan the real killer? Or just another pawn in a larger, more sinister game? And most disturbingly, why do the killings and messages seem to reappear, even decades later? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And if you love true crime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking stories. Because in the world of unsolved mysteries, the horror never ends.